Obviously, Advantage Real Estate is my company. We've been serving the Central Coast since 2000, so we just celebrated our 20th anniversary this year, which we were pretty excited about. So in the beginning, Advantage was started by my mother, Bonnie Saxton, and her partner, Janice Neigebauer, as a 100% local, non-franchise, women-owned business. Originally, they had worked for, those of you who've been around a while probably remember Roberts and Associates Real Estate, which was a pretty busy firm at the time back in the 90s. And Doug Roberts, the owner, decided that he was going to scale back to just a two-person operation with just he and his wife. He was kind of downsizing and decided he didn't want all the brokers to oversee. So all of the brokers that had worked for him branched out, and Bonnie and Janice started Advantage here, originally with 7 brokers, and I think they were all from Roberts and Associates rather. And so their first year of business, they had a pretty busy year because they were all established. They had 85 closed transactions in the first year in business, and the total was 22.5 million in sales for the year. And the average sale price back in 2000 was $129,014, which at the time, it's a lot of money. It still is today, but that building in the picture on the lower right-hand corner is the original Advantage Real Estate. Actually, it was Advantage Coastal Real Estate at the time. They had, we've since dropped the coastal part, so we're just Advantage Real Estate, but we used to be Advantage Coastal, and that was the original building. It's right next to the Kelson's gas station. And right to the right of that building, or to the north, was the Roberts and Associates building, which I think now is TLC Credit Union. I think that's the name of the business, but it's pretty much right across the street from Seatown is where the old building was. And ironically, Tanya is now working with a mortgage broker, Cross Country Mortgage, and they just leased that building. So that's going to be her new office from now on, which is kind of ironic, I thought. So that was 2000, and fast forward to today. This is our new building on the lower left. I think we've been here for about at least 12 years. Today, we're no longer Advantage Coastal Real Estate, just Advantage Real Estate. And we've got 18 licensed brokers, which is about all I think I can handle, because every desk in the office is full now. So we're pretty much at capacity. We've got a couple other little spaces in here that could be converted to offices, but 18 I think keeps me plenty busy. 2020 closings. So this has been a really, really busy year for us. Right now we're at 92 million in sales that have closed year to date. And then we've got about another 20 million in pending deals that should close before the end of the year. So that should put us around 110 million in closings, which is definitely a record. I think last year was one of our busier years. We were probably around 75 million. And part of the reason is prices have gone up. The average sale is higher today, but also a lot of the listings that have been on the market for quite a while without selling have since sold. So, whoop, darn it. I knew that was going to happen. So the average closed sale this year was 314,122. That's quite a bit higher than back in 2000, the 129,000. So we're not quite triple, but closing in on it. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we have multiple Lincoln County Board of Realtor of the Year recipients. I think I've got 4 here in the office out of the 18 brokers. And that's just one member per year is chosen for that. Out of, we have like 400 this year, 400 brokers in the Lincoln County Board. So we just became a state certified real estate continuing education provider, so we can do classes and award continuing education hours. Everyone needs 30 hours every 2 years to maintain their license. And then one of the things that we've started recently is sponsoring the NHS Gene Morrow Award, which is when I went to high school, Gene Morrow was the football coach, and I actually worked with him and his family listing a house they had in Agate Beach. So I thought that was kind of neat to do. And then kind of in line with what we do at Rotary, we like to give back to the county through charity. We work with Donate to Samaritan House and a lot of the local charities and high school stuff. You know, I've always felt that sponsoring a sports team or, you know, Little League or something like that is better than putting my advertising into like Zillow and, you know, commercial marketing. And we're, I think we get about 1/3 of our power through solar. So we've tried to go sustainable. We have solar panels on the roof and trying to get in line with the green practices there. And so I worked with my father at Orca Builders from 1995 to 2008, and we built about, I think it was around 117 new custom homes during that time on the coast. So for me, it was a easy segue from construction into real estate. A lot of the questions that people would ask me, having been a builder, I knew a little more about construction, so that was kind of maybe an edge, I guess, had its pros and cons. I was licensed as a real estate broker in 2008. We decided to shut down the construction company because that was about the time the mortgage crisis happened in the US, and the real estate market tanked. So it was actually a pretty lousy time to get into real estate because of that reason. But I think the upside was that it made me have to work really hard to sell enough to pay my mortgage and bills. So in a way, that was a good thing. You know, even during the recessions and the crashes, people still need places to live. So, you know, it was just a matter of, you know, we didn't have near the number of sales that we have today, obviously. So that meant just more advertising and more hustling to come up with deals. After about 2 years, I became a principal broker in 2010. And then Bonnie, her goal was to retire in 2015, at least from the office day-to-day operations. So I took over in 2015, managing the office here. And let's see, I took an active role with the Lincoln County Board of Realtors in 2017. I chaired the MLS committee, which is responsible for it's the software which shows all of our listings and data input. And I was vice president in 2017, which at the time I didn't know what I was getting myself into, because that turned into becoming president in 2019 and 20. And then this year, our nominating committee met and for some reason decided that 2020 was kind of a bad year for, you know, with COVID and everything going on. So they decided we should have a do-over in 2020 and 2021. So, so I'm the first person to have to do 2 years successive presidency. And, you know, again, mainly because it's been such a crazy year, I guess, was their reasoning. This last year, I got to participate in the Oregon Association of Realtors Leadership Academy, which which is 20 realtors from around the state out of about 18,000 brokers. So that was a great experience. Got to visit Sun River and Salishan and the headquarters of OAR in Salem, and they took pretty good care of us and fed us really well there. So that was a neat experience. And then before I knew I was going to be president of the Board of Realtors again this coming year, starting November, I applied for a couple of committees for Oregon Association of Realtors and National Association of Realtors. I didn't really expect to get the national committee because, you know, there's not a lot of committee members out of, NAR has 1.5 million realtors. So it was kind of neat. I think I'll get to do a little bit of, take a couple good trips to the expos and things like that. So kind of looking forward to that. And then the photo here is me and my partner, Jackson. I was going to do a little bit of advertising and say twice the service with my team there. That's the picture I've got at the Lincoln County Board office. So figured I'd throw that one in. The philosophy here at Advantage, we're very non-competitive, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really proud about. Our team is more focused on teamwork. And you know, the approach we've always taken is that real estate should be a service industry, not a sales industry. Everyone needs a house to live, so it's not to live in. So it's not like we're really pushing the idea so much as come buy a house, but you know, how can we help find you the house that's right for you? And kind of in the same light, commissions, from my perspective, have always just been a byproduct of good service. I think it's pretty typical for a new agent to count the commissions when they have a sale in the works and say, oh boy, this is going to be a $4,000 paycheck or whatever. But you know, I've learned that if you just focus on the actual people and the sale, the process, the commissions are just a byproduct. So with that mentality, it's easy to treat a buyer that's buying $1 million property just as well, or I guess the other way around. It's easy to treat a buyer that's buying, say, $100,000 property just as well and just as good a service as someone buying $1 million property. And then teamwork has always been big here. I have a lot of the veteran brokers that have been with us forever, like Tim Myrick and Scarlett in my office. And they've always been, you know, our whole team has been real nurturing to newer brokers. I think the success of everyone is kind of paramount to the success of the overall operation. Excuse me. You know, the newer brokers that come in, I think, appreciate just the non-competitive environment that we try to maintain. It's not, we never have any competitions of who can sell the most in a month or even who can sell the most in a year. It's just all about people doing what they feel is, you know, their goal, I guess. And then supporting the community, which supports us, has always been key also. And then, so of our 18 brokers, we have a lot of veterans, and they have a combined 250 years of experience right here on the Oregon coast. So most of the brokers have not come in from other markets necessarily, but a lot of them have been here practicing since the 80s. The map on the right side is interesting because that represents just 2020. So this is just current year to date. The blue boxes indicate a closed sale. Yellow boxes indicate pending sales. And then the green are active. And as you can see, there really aren't a whole lot of green boxes because there's not a lot of active listings. But this is a pretty good representation of the area we cover, which is mainly just Lincoln County from say Otis to Yachats, and then inland to Eddyville or so. I've always felt that it doesn't make sense to try and sell in other counties because we don't really know those areas. We get a lot of brokers that come from Portland because maybe the inventory is dried up there, and they'll list a property here on the coast. I think the problem with that is there are a lot of nuances to certain areas, and unless you're familiar with them, you really can't provide information to a buyer. Had a broker who listed a condo in Keith's subdivision there, Shoreline Ridge, and I had set up a showing with a prospective buyer. And when I called to set it up, I said, yeah, I'd like to show your Shoreline Ridge condo. And it was a broker from Portland, and he said, well, I don't have anything at Shoreline Ridge. I've got something on Spring Street. And he didn't even know what the name of the subdivision or complex was, which was, you know, it's just an example of knowing what you're selling, I guess. Biggest challenge right now everyone's talking about is affordable housing, the lack of affordable housing. And it's definitely not a local problem, it's a national one. That's the biggest issue that we grapple with. And it's really hard. We get a lot of first-time home buyers that come in and they're just gung-ho to buy a house, and maybe they've saved up enough for a down payment. And, you know, there's just nothing to sell them. So some of the reasons for the housing crunch, when I got out of construction, like I mentioned back around 2008, new construction really came to a grinding halt, and it never really picked up the way that it had been going in, you know, 2006, 2005, 2007 even. It really hasn't rebounded to the levels that we were seeing back then. And another issue that's kind of a factor, especially here in our community, is there's a lack of remaining buildable land. So most of the vacant lots that you find out there nowadays have issues like they're denied for septic approval if they're outside of city limits. They're steep. They have geological challenges. They're expensive to build on. Talking with Dean Sawyer the other day, he said that Newport should have been called Canyonville, like Canyonville, because we have so many canyons and challenges in terms of expanding our urban growth boundary. So yeah, the lack of buildable land is definitely an issue. Wilder is in the process of starting phase 2, which should open up about at least 50 or 60 new lots. That'll help. There's also a lack of skilled trade labor. Graduating seniors all have the, I guess they have the expectation that they need to go to college to succeed. So, you know, we've seen at the high schools kind of the disappearance of the shop class or auto shop, that sort of thing. Higher pressure for students to not go into things like construction or blue collar trades. Another big issue for the housing shortages or the lack of affordable housing is the increased regulatory costs and construction requirements. The city of Newport's requiring people to put in sidewalks on the streets, for example, when they develop their lots, you know, requiring the landowner to pay for sidewalks and new storm drain connections and things like that. So, you know, it was already expensive enough, but now it's just getting harder. We all know property taxes are not going down, they're going up every year. Higher material and labor costs is another challenge because we have less skilled workers in the industry. There's more of a, you know, it's a supply and demand issue. So contractors have gotten more expensive, and the material, especially this year, have really gone through the roof. And I don't know exactly what causes it, but or what has caused it, but I'm sure it has to do with COVID and production and, you know, like groceries. But a sheet of plywood that cost $11 a sheet a year or two ago now cost around 30. So in some cases, lumber and building materials have almost tripled. And then a big problem here locally is that our local wage earners can't compete with buyers from other locations. We have, retirees from California, and this is probably my biggest client base right now. California or Phoenix or even Portland, they're selling their home for $700,000, and it's not hard for them to bring that here and pay maybe $500,000 for a house and still have some money to spare. Local wage earners, they don't have that home to sell for $1 million that they can invest here in the community. And then price appreciation for real estate has greatly outpaced our income growth. The jobs here in the community that used to pay 20 bucks an hour back in 2000 probably pay about the same today or pretty close to it, maybe 10% more today, but real estate's almost triple. So financing has gotten harder, bigger down payment requirements, credit requirements, appraisals are stricter today. So, in general, it's just a tough deal for locals, first-time home buyers, and even second move-up buyers. The positive takeaway is that there are more families, more households with multiple wage earners. Instead of just the husband working, the husband and wife both have incomes, so they can, afford housing that they wouldn't with just one income. Interest rates are great. They're lower than they've ever been. We're seeing some now come in at like 2.5%, which, is really unheard of. I think the double-edged sword, the thing that I'm really most concerned about with these low rates is that obviously, someday they've got to go back up, and a buyer that can afford a $350,000 house based on 2.5% interest, if rates go up to 4.5%, suddenly they can only afford a $250,000 house, and that's bound to affect the resale on homes somewhere down the road when interest starts to go up. 2008, we had, the problem back then was anyone that went into their lender could get a loan with just stated income. They didn't have to really prove their income or do too much to obtain that financing. So when the bubble burst and suddenly nobody could afford those adjustable rate mortgages that had ratcheted up, there was just a big wave of foreclosures. They've kind of went the other way since and made it especially difficult. The worst was around 2010. After this big flurry of foreclosures, suddenly it got really, really tough for even qualified buyers to get financing because, they were overcautious, and instead of anybody just walking in and getting financing, it was almost impossible even for really well qualified buyers. Fortunately, that's eased up. That's today it's actually not too hard to get financing. There's a lot of paperwork involved, but there aren't quite as many hoops as there were back in 2010. The good part about it is that it should translate to fewer foreclosures down the road. Most people getting loans today can actually afford what they're buying, at least by the lender's standards. And then historically, real estate builds wealth more consistently than other asset classes. So from an investment perspective, real estate has been a pretty good storage of wealth. Of course, it has its ups and downs, just like everything else. And then I had to close this out with some funny advertising examples. I wish Doretta was on here today because this is a Dorita Mayu who's advertised with a bag of Doritos. These are all actual ads. They come up with some pretty crazy stuff. One on the lower left corner, Dave Foreman, number sales rep in the region, according to my mother. Only Dave's mother surveyed. I don't know that mine would give me the same endorsement, but I haven't tried. Whoops. Jumped ahead of myself here. Chris Clark, the real estate guy, says don't get a divorce, just get a bigger house. And then Ken and Chuck have their own power team. It's Ken and his marionette or his ventriloquist dummy. So I thought I'd use my dog in a similar respect. And then this next one on the last page is my favorite. Pick your real estate agent. She's got pretty high stats, and then alcohol tolerance 100. So you could tell she's a seasoned veteran of the industry. So I don't know. I think that's kind of the gist of what I thought would be worth sharing. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Diane?
Well, I have questions and comments.
Sure.
Okay, first of all, you are the realtor that when we were thinking of buying a place here in Newport, you are the realtor that sold us our house. And if I can make a few comments about that, and you probably know what they're going to be, Freddie, but the rest of the people haven't heard them except for my husband. And I would also then like to ask a couple of questions.
Sure, and thanks for that too, Diane.
Okay, so the first one is that we didn't know you very well. And the way that we picked you was that Keith came to a few Rotary Club meetings. I was too busy, and he picked a Rotarian, which is you. And that's how we found you, and you showed us our property. And there were a lot of units available in Shoreline Ridge. And these condos are premium condos. They were built in 2007, and the price had, because of the tank in the market, the price had gone down in 2015 when we bought, so that it was affordable for us. We looked at a lot of the available condos at Shoreline Ridge, and we decided to purchase the condo that we're in for a lot of reasons. And Freddie's mother, who also works with him and who I have gotten to know, and she's a wonderful woman, Bonnie, she represented the seller. And again, of course, we didn't know Freddie. When we were negotiating, and we had good negotiations, and we got exactly what we wanted. So thank you, Freddie, and thank you for negotiating with your mom. But every time he said, well, I'll ask the seller's realtor, it's like, Freddie, why don't you just say, I'll ask my mom? But of course, that wouldn't have, as Bonnie told me when I related that story to her, that would not have been professional. And I agree with that. The second funny story that I'd like to tell, and again, Freddie is aware of this. Like Freddie said in his presentation, it ain't over till it's over. We thought we were going to be so smart and get our own lender, and that fell through. Freddie was kind enough. He didn't even say, well, I told you so, but he was kind enough to find us a new lender and a new appraiser. Well, me being who I am, when the appraisal came through, I looked at everything, and Keith said, just Diane, just accept it. We got the loan amount for what we want, just go with it. Well, we did, but having said that, we have, if you ever see on Facebook about our swimming pool, you'll get this story, because the appraiser, he was an appraiser, I guess, from Portland or something, and he talked about this. He did, you do comparables, and he talked about the swimming pool at Shoreline Ridge, where, well, our swimming pool is pretty big. It's called the Pacific Ocean. I have a couple of questions, Freddie. You indicated that there is a shortage of property right now on this Oregon Central Coast in Lincoln County. What is the most expensive house that you currently have listed, if you don't mind sharing that? And then what's the least expensive? Because I wanted to see what the range is. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And that was, yeah, the appraiser, I think, definitely misinterpreted the ocean out there. But yeah, the least expensive that we have right now is probably a listing in Toledo at $299, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and actually a pretty clean little place. Anything like that, we're seeing multiple offers almost the day that it hits the market. And that's something that we've only, recently experienced. That used to be something that we all heard horror stories about from Portland brokers. The level of competition from buyers in the, say 350,000 and under price range is really intense. I think we're still not as bad as Portland. My brother is a realtor up in Portland, and he has clients in the $350,000 price range. And they found the perfect place a week ago, submitted an offer. I think it was above asking price by $5,000. They did need a loan. They were pre-approved, and there were 14 other offers, and they didn't stand a chance. So it's not quite that bad here on, say, the $300,000 to $400,000 listings. We're getting maybe 3 or 4 offers within the first couple days. And a lot of them, if they're cash buyers, they're just really hard to compete with that. So I'd say the low right now is about 300,000. The high, we've got a couple transactions right now, a little bit north of $1 million, so maybe $1.2 million. That's something this last year is really, and I think that's why our overall volume is up so high, is that up until just recently, those $1 million listings were just kind of sitting. They'd been on the market for 1 year plus 2 years. This year they're starting to sell, mostly out of area buyers, but it's good to see and I think, because the $200,000 houses the houses that were $200,000 a few years ago that are now $300,000, it just kind of all trickles down maybe, and suddenly $1 million doesn't seem like a crazy price for that oceanfront house when a non-view home's selling for $350 in the middle of town. So yeah.
Freddie, I have another compliment or a couple more compliments, and then maybe another question. Well, I just, okay. And then I will open for anybody else who wants to ask questions. One of the nice things about Freddie and his business model is that Keith and I don't have another home in us. In other words, we have committed. It's so hard as you age to move, and we've pared down because he says we traded the view for space, and it all works. It's good because, I mean, who needs all that stuff? I think they call it minimalizing. But every once in a while, and it's mostly me because my husband rolls his eyes, but I just like to look at homes in Newport or Shoreline Ridge or whatever. And Freddie, he knows we're not going to buy, but he always takes the time to show us the properties. And it's just fun to look at and then say, yeah, we're satisfied about where we are. Not that we aren't, we love where we live. The second compliment that I'd like to pay to Freddie and his business model for his business is, we know a few of his realtors and have met others, like I hope I pronounce his name right, Aryan Sunman. Mm-hmm. He is a photographer extraordinaire, like my husband, and he works with Freddie And I think, Freddie, what I'm trying to say is that you get the right brokers, or the right brokers, I think, are the right salespeople in your business, and then they stay with you for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think we've really focused on is kind of the chemistry, because
Yes, exactly.
the more aggressive, I guess, kind of, just the brokers that are competitive in terms of, boy, I'm going to sell more than anybody else. That's what we try to avoid, I guess. So they're all pretty team oriented. Aryan is great photographer. I wish he'd take my listing photos for me, but I haven't asked him. He might, but yeah, he's good. Yeah, a lot of newer brokers that are pretty energetic, and a lot of good mixture, I guess, of veterans and newer brokers. But anyway, thanks, Diane, for the compliments. It's always nice to get out of the office and go see listings anyway. I mean, without going to see everything in person, it's tough to be able to convey to buyers, when they say, what do you think of this place or this place, so it's nice to just get out and see everything anyway. So.
Well,
Freddie, in Oregon, is there a different licensing where you have sales associates and broker associates, where brokers are just normally more seasoned, they've been a sales associate for a while, or is it just one license?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So everyone starts out as a broker now. It used to be an agent, but now it's a broker, and that's through the Oregon Real Estate Agency, which is the regulatory agency. And then, so the next step up from that is a principal broker, or a managing, it's a managing principal broker who can oversee other brokers. I think you need, there's a certain number of years required, and, some criteria aside from just the standard broker level. But a few of the things that they require, and to get for someone to become a new licensed broker, 150 hours of education through an approved provider, background test, and fingerprinting. They're pretty careful about not issuing licenses to anyone with, any kind of dishonesty or any kind of charges in the past. I mean, when we're going into people's homes with all of their possessions and belongings and so forth, they're pretty careful to make sure that they're not letting ex-convicted burglar or someone like that obtain a license. And then, once someone becomes a broker or receives a broker's license, that doesn't make them a realtor. The realtor title is associated with the Association of Realtors, which is a organization, a national organization that kind of lobbies and provides resources like education and cooperative listing agreements. So just there aren't a whole lot of them, but it's possible to be a broker and not be a realtor, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I can tell you just a short funny on the word realtor. One of the witnesses on one of my earlier investigations was a realtor, and I got an affidavit from him, and I called him a realtor in the affidavit. And when I took it out to sign it, he was real reluctant to sign the affidavit, because I didn't have authorization to use the word realtor, because it was a copyrighted term and I couldn't use it. So it ended up kind of getting a bit testy about it, and I had to go back to the U.S. attorney and say, listen, do I have to take this out of there? What are we going to do? And he says, well, if he won't sign it, we'll just have him affirm the rest of it, and that'll be it. So I went out and he did finally sign it. But when ultimately that was one of my first affidavits and one of the first cases that went to trial. When we got him at trial, a U.S. attorney had the same problem with him when he asked him his name. He wouldn't tell him his name because it was hearsay. He didn't know his actual name because he had never seen his birth certificate, and he only knew what his mother told him. So he knew that, you know, what his mother called him, but he couldn't affirm that that was his name. So they chased him around for about 5 minutes on the stand before the judge just kind of said, "Move on. You know, we're not going to get in a fight here about whether you know your name or not." And he was a pretty popular, well-respected realtor in town, but he just had this kind of edge to him that he wasn't going to let us use the word realtor, and he wasn't going to fess up that that was his name. So, but the realtor, the copyright realtor is.
That's pretty funny. They, you know, actually they've been kind of hammering on me to pronounce it correctly, which is realtor instead of realtor, but you know, it just doesn't feel natural to me. So I've kind of bucked the trend. But when Doretta was president of the Lincoln County Board, she converted and she started saying realtor. I'm not quite there yet.
Say, Freddie, there's a TV commercial that says they'll find you a realtor to sell your house and stuff like that, and the commission will be only 2%. How can they do that?
And who's that through, like Redfin or something like that?
I can't remember specifically what it was, but it just, you know, the 2% is what keeps in my mind, because I thought most of the time it's a 7%.
Yeah, well, we've gotten a little more competitive too. It used to be we pretty typically would charge 6%, and then we'd split 50-50 with the buyer's agent. So, you know, if Doretta if she's representing the buyer and I'm representing the seller pays the 5%, and Doretta and I split it 50-50. And that's pretty typical, although there isn't any set. You know, that one of the biggest things, matter of fact, the Association of Realtors is in a lawsuit. It's a I can't remember what the term is, but the key to the commissions is that it has to be negotiable and not an industry standard that the industry sets. It's kind of like oh boy, not a monopoly, but whatever they antitrust, or anyway, so commissions are determined, you know, individually by the specific broker and brokerage. We've been charged, you know, I personally charge 5% and then give 50% of that to the other broker, so it's 2.5% and 2.5%. But with a lot of those limited service listings, you know, you could, there are brokers out there that will put your property up on the MLS for like $500 and just put pictures of it up there, but put your phone number. So, you know, someone, literally all they're doing is sticking it on the internet, which people can do themselves. I mean, you could put your own home on Zillow if you really wanted to and just forego a realtor altogether. I think the value that we add is knowing there are a lot of pitfalls, you know, there are a lot of disclosure requirements on older homes. You have to give disclosures on lead paint and asbestos, and you have to provide a property disclosure statement, or if you don't, the buyer has an out all the way up until closing. So I think in this business, it's not so much, it's not the things that you know that are going to come back and get you. It's the things that you don't know as a seller or even a buyer. We've had first-time buyers go to properties that were built in the 60s and 70s, and you know, you see an indication or a sign of an underground oil tank. That's just one example. You have to, some of those mitigations can be, you know, $6,000 and $7,000, even more $1,000. So especially with, you know, I mean, I've done it now for 12 years full-time as in real estate after construction, and I still learn something new every day, you know. So just the amount of things that can come along are more than you would expect, I think. I've had clients in the past or people in the past, you know, if I'm showing a for sale by owner listing and I'm representing the buyers, a lot of times the sellers will say, well, you know, I don't need a realtor because the escrow company is going to handle everything and they can do it all for me. And really the title company is just a neutral third party who relies on the contract language to guide them through the transaction. I mean, they make no decisions on behalf of a buyer or seller. They just do what they're told to. So, you know, that's one misconception, is that the title company can help either side. They really can't. They're just there to do, you know, what the paperwork tells them to.